What is up, YouTube? This is T Quentin1, and I'll be honest, I don't know when next you'll see me. Ever since the conclusion of my Harryhausen vids about a year ago, I felt very burnt out. This year I've been going through some stuff, and while making videos is something I enjoy, it's harder and harder to justify even the small time commitment I've given to them. This is not goodbye, at least not in the way my Toy Story 3 vid was a decade ago. If I get an idea for a video next week, I'll make one, but right now, talking about entertainment on YouTube just isn't fun anymore. The state of the world and of this website just kind of depresses me. And on top of that, I've kind of been having a rough year in general. So I thought it was unfair to lie and put on a happy face. You guys are smart enough to know it wouldn't be real anyway. And I'd rather focus on other things right now than pretending everything is fine on the internet. But it is a tradition in recent years to rank the movies I saw in the summer season, and it just didn't feel right not doing so. A little lighter on movies this year, missed out on Backrooms and Obsession and some of the buzzier new films. There's been some real disappointments and some high highs, so let's get into it starting at the bottom of the list. Number 9, Supergirl. A crushing disappointment and a waste of a good actor, especially after last summer's rousing Superman. I don't know if I've ever felt this empty watching a comic book movie before. Even if there are films in the genre that are technically worse, not a single emotional beat hit the mark. All of the sincerity that has characterized Gunn's version of DC so far is hollowed out and replaced by a shambling, zombified version of its worst self. The most generic villain in a movie since the Marvels, a dull, uninspired visual style, humor that wasn't insufferable but wasn't funny either, and a story that just baffled me at every turn. Kara's whole arc in this movie is learning to embrace Earth as her home, but she only spends like 10 seconds there in the whole movie. Also, the hacky screenplay keeps inventing new excuses seemingly every scene for her not to be able to use her powers. Now, look, Alcock is a promising young actor, and I don't mind Kara's personality being a bit of a mess. It's just a shame the movie around her was too. I like Jason Momoa as Lobo. That was a good casting decision. And I'm not completely ready to jump ship. I've enjoyed too much of the previous entries in the DCU, but they cannot afford to put out something this shoddy. Here's hoping Clayface is good. Number 8, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Now'd be a good time to sell your Dave Filoni stock. It was nice to see a Star Wars film in theaters, especially it was nice to take my daughter to her first Star Wars film. And it is better than Rise of Skywalker, but it feels like an extra long episode of the show, and that's not a compliment. Plenty of people have theorized that this movie was originally conceived as the fourth season of Mandalorian. I'd go one step further and say I think it was probably filmed as the fourth season and just trimmed down to 2 hours. There's a moment at the end of Act Two where the movie is over and you just kind of have to wait 10 minutes for them to come up with a new story. I don't know, something ain't right there. It just doesn't pop. And that's the one thing Star Wars needs to do. We're talking about a film series that has, for better or worse, defined the cultural moment every time it has reinvented itself. This just kind of feels like more of the same, but worse. Favreau's too competent of a director for me to hate it. The action is pretty good. The sequences with Grogu and the little puppet aliens are actually fairly Lucas-esque, but Filoni's screenplay is completely inept. What works on a Cartoon Network show 20 years ago is not the same as quality writing for a $200 million major motion picture. The usually magnetic Pedro Pascal also seems even more checked out than he did on the third season of the show, and volume, as a technology, has officially worn out its welcome. Build a real set, you fucking dweebs. But one thing we can all agree on: Road to the Hut is not his father. He's his own man. Number 7, Scary Movie. Even as someone who grew up on this franchise, the best entries in this series only ever had a 50-50 hit rate of inspired gags and real groaners. This one's closer to 2080. There's some good pokes at weapons and sinners, and this version of Ghostface is actually consistently really funny, but the rest of it is pretty standard D-tier Wayans material. I laughed, not going to pretend like I didn't, but with recent years giving us great comedies like The Naked Gun and Hundreds of Beavers, this is not up to par. Also, there's some bits about those damn kids that were eye rolling at best. Not terrible, and honestly, after seeing Supergirl, I've softened on it quite a bit, but I mean, come on, it's Scary Movie 6. What did you people expect? I did get to see Regina Hall's ass, though. That was nice. Number 6, Masters of the Universe. Once again, Travis Knight delivered a pretty good movie that just so happened to bomb. I have no attachment to He-Man as a property, and some of the Marvel-y humor got on my nerves, but the rest of Masters of the Universe was a pleasing spectacle and a competent action movie, essentially accomplishing the obvious goal of making this Barbie but for boys. I liked that Adam is portrayed as a dumb himbo, which made his character a lot of fun, and I hope Nicholas Galitzine goes on to head more big movies like this. And I can't believe I'm saying this, Jared Leto doesn't ruin the movie. Actually, portraying Skeletor in the key of 80s Tim Curry was downright inspired. Still, he can go fuck himself, though. Look, it's an IP no one gives a shit about, including me, but as a big summer movie, it works just fine. And who'd have guessed DC and Star Wars would have such poor showings this summer that He Man would be the better time at the movies? For shame. Number 5 is Jackass Best and Last. Kind of the default weakest in the series, considering how much old footage there is, but it is still a Jackass movie. Those are always fun. I saw a parody article that said after this movie that Jackass might be the strongest long running American institution. And even though it's a joke, it did kind of feel like that watching this. I've never watched one of these and not laughed to the point of tears. And if I had my way, they'd be the modern equivalent to That's Entertainment, and we get one every decade. But it's nice to get one more for sure. That opening sequence alone is one of the most intense sequences on any film this year, and this is ostensibly a comedy. The convict stunt stands out as an all timer Jackass bit, and I'm so glad we finally saw it. This goes a bit heavier on gross out than the, in my opinion, superior Jackass Forever, and that's never been my favorite part of Jackass. The stunts and pranks were, and the new ones we got are good enough for this to be worth watching, even if the clip show format was unappealing. Gotta say, I wish we got a little more of the new cast. They had decent camera presence in the last movie, and they were just kind of there in this one, which is a shame. Look, it's more Jackass. It's fun. Like I said, it is the weakest one, but that doesn't mean it's not well worth watching. Number 4, Evil Dead Burn. The Frenchest Evil Dead movie, for sure, if not the best. Evil Dead Burn is a cruel, nasty, oddly horny, and just plain spiteful little movie. God bless it. The Evil Dead film series deserves some roses for maintaining a consistent quality, even after Sam Raimi went from the director to the producer, something the Spider Man franchise wasn't able to manage. Part of what has made the recent ones so good is their commitment to making them standalone movies. Evil Dead 2013, Rise, and Burn are all clearly part of the same franchise, but also all have a distinct identity. This one isn't quite as fun as the Proyas inspired Rise, but it is an effective and unsettling horror film. One that delivers the gross out thrills and creative set pieces we've come to expect from these movies. There's some gnarly makeup, and I gotta say, some pretty game performances from the up and comers in this one. The most fun being Lucienne Buchanan as the Deadite possessed Thea. There is a somewhat clumsily implemented allegory that I didn't much care for. It does cross over into having just too much plot for an Evil Dead movie, but it tries enough new things that it's still exciting. I am genuinely intrigued as to what the next film is going to be, and this is one of the better offerings this summer. Now, before I say what my number 3 choice is, I'd like to offer some context. Normally, my cutoff for these is the first week of August. There's usually one last big blockbuster that comes out around that time most summers. And once school starts back up, the summer movie season ends, basically. I made an exception for Alien Romulus in 2024 because it was a big franchise horror movie. And I'm making another exception this year because End of Oak Street is really, really good. David Robert Mitchell dynamites his way out of director's jail with the first 80s throwback in years that doesn't devolve into kitschy nostalgia bait. I saw a review quote that described this as basically what if 80s Spielberg had directed Jurassic Park instead of 90s Spielberg, and that pretty much sums it up. Although I would also add that there's a pretty liberal sprinkling of Joe Dante in here as well. Some may find the movie too mean-spirited, but I thought this mischievous trip to prehistoric times was a complete blast. Some of the hardest laughs I've had in a movie all year, but the humor doesn't feel forced or detract from the drama or horror. Another late career highlight for Anne Hathaway, too. She is killing it this year. And Mitchell deserves a lot of credit for making feathered dinosaurs scary, something the Jurassic franchise has never even had the balls to try. The Jurassic Park films have sucked for so long that it has almost made dinosaurs uncool, especially when that 65 movie came out and also sucked the big one. But End of Oak Street is a really good dino horror movie, and that feels like something worth celebrating. You guys don't have to settle anymore. We finally got a good one. Go see it. Number two, Disclosure Day. A polarizing film for sure, but I'm on the side of the aisle that loved this movie. Is it the most tightly plotted Spielberg film? No, but it is a hell of a well directed movie with some of the best moments in anything I saw all year. Emily Blunt gives what I feel was her best acting to date in the lead role, and the panic attack scene in particular broke my heart. Spielberg proves, even 50 years into his career, that he's still the motherfucking GOAT. And anyone who says they weren't on the edge of their seat during that chase through the farmhouse is straight up lying. As with all his best movies, the emotions hit even harder than the wrestlers who cameo at the beginning of the movie, and the tension is kept up expertly. While I'd agree that Spielbergian optimism rings a bit hollow given the current state of the world, part of what makes this a home run is that there is enough room for your own interpretation. The central argument at the core of this film, whether or not humanity is ready for this information and whether knowing it will usher in a golden age or be the final nail in our coffin, is never truly resolved, and that's what makes it brilliant. Did these characters' actions save or doom us as a species? That's an exercise for the viewer. And that level of trust in the audience is part of what makes Disclosure Day work, whereas previous high drama space movies like Interstellar and Contact largely don't. I don't want to call it a return to form because he's kind of been killing it so far in the 2020, but it's the first good movie he's made about aliens in a while, and that's pretty cool.
What were you trying to prove? That deep down, everyone's as ugly as you. You're alone.
Number one, The Odyssey. A monumental achievement and probably the single most immersive fantasy film ever made. There was only ever going to be one king of summer 2026. The Odyssey takes a story that has survived the collapse of multiple civilizations and manages to make it feel fresh and original, while still not losing what made it great in the first place. Nolan's most confident work as a director, The Fall of Troy, The Cyclops, Samantha Morton's terrifying turn as Cersei. There are so many great, memorable spectacles in The Odyssey, but the drama hits just as hard. It's hard to single out actors because everyone is great in this film. Google the cast list. If their name is in the movie, they brought it. That's how many great performances there are in this thing. Aside from Killers of the Flower Moon, I can't think of a film that uses a trip to the past, or in this case, something that never happened, to perfectly and cathartically explore the current moment. Doing something that might have ruined the world forever in pursuit of short term gain, and then having to live with that, is a fascinating and meaty theme to explore. And even though it's a fantasy film, it is a powerful exploration of honor, the cost of war, and most surprisingly, faith. That's my favorite detail in the film. While Odysseus inhabits a world of giant monsters, sea beasts, sirens, and witches, the only thing we don't see any direct physical evidence of are the gods. That's where faith comes in. It's a very Christian interpretation of the story and probably the biggest departure from the original myth, but it's also the most emotionally resonant portrayal of religious faith that I've ever experienced. I left this movie going, wow, Tom Holland didn't suck in that thing. I can't hype it up any more than that. It's fantastic. Anyway, that was my ranking of summer 2026. I don't know when next I'll see you, like I said, but I do know I will see you again. This is T Quentin 1 signing out.